Good morning and welcome on the Sunrise Safari. My name is Brent Smith and I'm going to be one of your guides for the next few hours. I have Bryan Zebra on camera with me, and sometimes together we're known as the Killer Bees. So hopefully with Bryan back on the vehicle we're going to break this leopard duck that has been plaguing us since I've been back. We're out looking for tracks in the southern section of Djuma Private Game Reserve, and we're on a live African safari. On the other vehicle we have Jamie and Wium, and in final control we have Kirsty and Jess. So hopefully it's going to be a very exciting sunrise safari. We are going to see what we can find. Jamie's working the northern area, we're working the southern area. And let's get going and see what's out there. We've been sitting here listening, we haven't heard anything, so let's hopefully we're going to find some tracks shortly. If not, there's always lots of fascinating and interesting things to look out for while out on a live safari. There's a plethora of birds and wild flowers that are starting to sprout now after that early rain, and of course lots and lots of trees. And that is one thing I will guarantee you on this safari, that we will see trees, and many of them. Heading onto a road that's not used too often, and I haven't driven that road in quite a while, so hopefully we'll find some tracks, or even better, some animals there. I haven't heard any updates about the Birmingham boys for a while. I know they have been down to the south of us, actually, on this property here, so I am checking for tracks of lion and leopard, and hopefully wild dogs again. There have been two different packs of wild dogs running around, and quite interestingly, I've done some research into that pack of wild dogs we saw a couple of sunrise safaris ago, and they do not belong to the Investec pack, and they do not belong to the half-tail pack. And the fact that there were 5 males, I think it could be a dispersal pack. I'm waiting for confirmation from the Endangered Wildlife Trust to see if they know which pack this is. All the wild dog packs in the area are very heavily monitored, as they are the most endangered predator in South Africa. And the total population for this area is around 400 animals in an area the size of the country of Wales, the Greater Kruger National Park, which is 2.3 million hectares. So probably around 5.5 to 6 million acres of unfenced wilderness. And we operate in a small corner, sort of in the south and west of this reserve. It is made up of the Kruger National Park, which obviously, and as well as the transfrontier parks in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique, and then all the private reserves that border the western edge of the Kruger National Park, and there's no fences between them. So even though we might not be able to traverse everywhere, the animals can. We're just checking for tracks here. So at the moment we're heading almost due east into the rising sun. We will head off and cut slightly north of our southern boundary shortly. Just going to be on the Game Drive radio for a second. Copy, thanks. We are on the southern boundary. Jamie's checking the northern boundary. So I don't know if you can pick up on the road here, Bryan, the little spider webs across the ground that are just catching the light. It might be a little bit difficult in the with the camera. Maybe we can't really see, but there's a whole bunch of little spider webs right on the ground. made during the night, and a lot of these will be. Can you see them there, Brian?
I can see them from my view.
I know. I can also see them. We can see them from with our eyes, but we can't actually see them with the camera. But it's amazing how overnight certain spider species will even produce webs across a main road like this. And there we go. You can't really see them in the camera, but they will go from these bushes across like that. And obviously, being on a road is not very good for them. And it looks like a vehicle's already driven through here this morning. But there's some fascinating spider species. Two of my favorites, which we don't see very often, are bark spiders and bird-dropping spiders. And these guys are completely nocturnal spiders, and they are actually quite tasty apparently for a bird. So hence they have developed this incredible camouflage. So a bark spider literally looks like a piece of bark. So they will spin their web overnight, and before sunrise in the morning they will eat their web. And I mean, it takes a lot of energy and protein to produce that web. So what they do is they then will eat it so they don't lose all that nutrients that they've used to put up the web overnight. And the bird dropping spider literally looks like a little bird dropping. So he's got that little white and sort of browny thing, so it looks like a bird dropping, and he will during the day park himself on a branch, and it looks like basically the bird's just gone to the toilet there, and that's their defense mechanism against birds, as the bark spider will just put itself parallel on bark to try to hide from predators. Not only birds obviously, but geckos and lizards and lots of other things, including other insects and arachnids. Spiders and scorpions will eat each other from time to time as well. So we're quite bright up ahead of us. We're going to duck off to the north shortly. No tracks yet, unfortunately. Gorgeous morning. It is going to be an incredibly hot day today. Apparently we're going to go over 40 degrees Celsius, which I think is over 100 Fahrenheit. Game drive comms with you. Affirmative, I will relay when other stations get mobile. Copy, no problem. So, no tracks just yet. This is that same area where that male leopard toyed with us a few safaris ago. He came in and then out within the space of about 6 hours. So he had us befuddled, but we do have some zebra up ahead. Seems to be really enjoying this eastern boundary at the moment. Lots and lots of zebra around here. got some crossing the road, and then we've got this morning light with us. I'm just going to pop us back a little bit. Get ready with those screenshots. There could be some nice backlit zebras for you. Some waterbuck to the right as well. Big group of females that I can see. You can see the dust they're causing there and the little tails wagging behind the zebra. The male waterbuck in there as well. I'd say there are probably 25 to 30 zebra around us at the moment, as well as a good 15 waterbuck and a herd of about 30 impala. So lots of general game around. And stunning morning light. So those of you hearing that click click, don't worry, it's just my camera. And if you are taking any screenshots, don't forget to share them on the WildEarth Facebook page or on Twitter. So, and if anyone wants to ask us any questions about what we're seeing and what we're doing out here, feel free to do so. You can email us on questions@wildearth.tv, or if you're a tech savvy person, just use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. And so they're all moving off to the east of us across the boundary. There's a nice little zebra. So let's carry on, see what we can find. As those animals move off, we're going to do the same, and we're also going to cross to Jamie so she can bid you good morning, and we'll be back with you a little later.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Well, up. Mentioning somewhere that it was going to peak this afternoon at Alright, let's try this again now that we're at the crest of the hill. I'll say once again, good morning ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. And what I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by gremlins was that I heard tell that the temperatures are going to peak at 41 degrees centigrade today. So we're in for a hot one. Whilst Brent has gone and headed and checked along the southern boundary, I'm up on Buffelshoek cut line, checking the northern boundary for any sign of anything. The first thing we've spotted along this Buffelshoek cut line is the tracks of that mystery male leopard. I think it's the mystery male. He walked along and then he cut off into Buffelshoek. I'm starting to get familiar with his pattern a little bit, and I think he's going to cruise along east and in Buffelshoek, and hopefully, fingers crossed, pop out at Buffelshoek Dam. And with that in mind, that's where we're heading this morning to go and see what action is happening there. It's always a good time to visit a dam first thing in the morning. got even greener overnight whilst we've been out here. It's phenomenal. Or maybe it's just this particular area of Buffelshoek Dam and the way that we're seeing the sunlight. But it seems as though all of the bush willows have suddenly started sprouting as well. Good morning, Kuru. Are you going to stick around? You're a bit sort of hidden. There's a bottom in the bush, but it might be that he pops out. I know it's difficult to see, but he does have enormous horns. There we go. Beautiful. We've seen that herd of 5 that hangs around the sort of western edge of Djuma. It's interesting to compare their horns. This one's got very long, not as tightly curled and not as close together as, or not as far apart as like Zeus, for example. Zeus has got those widespread horns, and we've spoken a lot about them in the last day or so, just because we saw them twice in 2 drives. They seem to be hanging around there. A nice way to start the morning with a magnificent and very regal looking kudu bull. Since it is slightly north of our boundary, unfortunately I can't get us a closer look, and he does seem to be moving further north, so we'll leave him for now. He can enjoy his breakfast in peace. We will continue on looking for the various things to show you. I did make one slight error in my thinking this morning, and in terms of timing, I picked a road that runs directly east-west, which means we're driving straight into the sun. It's perfect for tracking though. Beautifully on the road. For a couple of fork-tailed drongos who were singing away in the morning, but they flew away, or further into the bush anyway, so we won't be able to get a view of them. It's very typical at this time of the morning to see all the birds out and about and singing their dawn chorus before it starts to get too hot. And as I said, these temperatures are going to really peak today. And Gilly in Milwaukee, welcome as always to the Sunrise Safari. You've noticed that the grazers and the browsers are trying to get as much eating done as possible. And is this the case? Are they trying to feed quickly in the morning while it's still cool, before it starts to get warmer and warmer, and then they can spend the afternoon sleeping in the shade? And that's absolutely what they're doing. They will still spend a bit of the afternoon every now and again moving through and browsing. We saw those kudu yesterday, who were nibbling away on various things. What I noticed yesterday around between 12 and 2 was that most of the animals, if they can, are lying down in the shade and ruminating. So they've taken the chance in the morning to ingest as much as possible, and then they use the opportunity in the afternoon to just ruminate and bring it back up and chew it again, chew those balls of cud. And I think you've put your finger on it. It's to do with the temperature mostly. Take the opportunity while it's cool. And the same goes for drinking as well. You'd sort of think that they would try and get to the waterhole at the hottest time of the day, but for the most part they try and do it first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening, so that they don't have to expend too much energy whilst they're out and about in the mid-afternoon. So rather than trying to walk all the way to the dam, which in itself is probably more dehydrating for them than actually just waiting a little bit in the shade, in the pool, and then making their way there as it starts to get a bit darker. And that's why it's always a very good idea to visit the various dams in the area first thing in the morning and in the evening, because that's when they're coming through. We saw that incredibly large kudu, really spectacular adult bull, and I'd spoken a little bit yesterday about the fact that they're probably at the shoulder the second highest antelope. They're really, really tall. And Dodie, who's watching all the way from British Columbia, you want to know how tall they are at the shoulder. And the answer is they probably stand quite close to where I am. It's about 1.5, just over 1.5 meters at the shoulder. I could double check the exact measurement for you, but they are very, very tall. Good couple of 100 kilograms of bull there. And probably exceeded only in height by something like an eland, which is our largest antelope species and the largest antelope species in the world. They might be slightly lighter than a sable, for example, or a roan, or maybe even a waterbuck. But in terms of just sheer height, they are one of the tallest and biggest that we get out here. And as I mentioned yesterday, I've seen them bounce over fences in the most incredible way from a standing start without even thinking about it. I'm going to loop around and double check and see if maybe something's made an appearance at Buffelshoek Dam. And whilst I do that, I believe that Brent has got one of the most beautiful birds of prey that we get out here to show you. Let's head across to him and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we've got a wonderful Bateleur who's still warming up this morning before heading out, waiting for those thermals so they can start soaring and looking for a meal. They are definitely one of the most spectacular looking birds we get here and that we see quite regularly. That wonderful black and white colouring. And would you believe they're very long lived as birds go. They can live for about 40 years, and it takes them about 8 to 10 years to get full adult plumage. So it's very difficult to judge age once they're an adult, but this is definitely an adult. And they're part of the snake eagle family. And what that means is they've got really, really thick scales and skin on their feet, and they will, apart from being scavengers, probably one of the most effective scavengers around, they will also hunt and they will also take snakes. Just going to try and move a little bit forward so we can get a front on view. And you'll find with a lot of the bigger birds of prey, they do like to sit in dead trees rather than in leaved trees, and this is because it's much easier to take off and land from a dead tree that doesn't have lots of branches and leaves and other things to impede them. And this one is sitting in a dead knobthorn tree. So they're saying they're incredibly gifted scavengers, incredible eyesight. They fly a lot lower than vultures and quite a lot of the other large birds of prey, and they've got that specially developed shortened tail, which helps them to maintain, or because they fly lower, they don't need to sort of balance the thermal so much, so they're constantly tiptoeing almost in the air with their wings. And quite often the first bird you'll find on a carcass, especially if it is a little bit hidden and flying at that little bit of a lower height than the vultures, and that gives them a slight advantage. Obviously on carcasses the vultures will push them off. But sitting in the nice early morning light, often when you see one, there's often another one sitting quite close by. I have looked, but with this fresh foliage on a lot of the trees, our visuals have been slightly dampened. We can't see as far as we could a few weeks ago. But we do often find a pair of Bateleur in this area. They don't always roost together, but they will roost relatively close to each other. Very nice and relaxed one. So we're going to continue to let... Oh, wait, Drongo incoming. Now, is he going to decide to have an argument with the Bateleur? Drongos often do that, will attack birds of prey. And you can see that vast size difference between the little fork-tailed drongo on the right and the Bateleur on the left. Definitely two birds we won't get confused too often. So a few safaris ago we tried to get to 50 bird species on a safari, on a sunrise safari. So I think while we keep looking for all the other bigger animals around here, let's see if we can do that again. So we've got 1 and 2, Bateleur and a fork-tailed drongo. So you guys keep count for me, and let's see if we can get to that magical 50. I think we got to 36 last time, so we were a little bit off. But we did have some lines that sort of got in the way of the birding that morning. So let's continue on, see what other birds and beasts we can find. We're definitely going to work through some different areas. Just wait for them, are they going to land? There's one of our more common species we see, having a bit of a balancing issue on the top of that knobthorn. Oh, and I think it was just chased by the other hornbill species. So we had a red-billed hornbill chased by, there we go, and chased again by a yellow-billed hornbill. There we go, 2 hornbills. Yellow-billed hornbill slightly bigger, the beak slightly more robust. And I have been looking carefully for hornbill nests, and there are incredible nests in the fact that the male will actually enclose the female in the nest, only leaving a little feeding hole. And she will actually molt and lose quite a lot of her feathers while she's in the nest, and he will keep feeding her till the chicks are old enough to come out. And I think I have seen one potential one down near Sandy Patch, so we'll be keeping an eye on that to see if they utilize that nest again. So that's 4, and then we've just flown up into the... Oh, we've got another 2 species. The birds are playing along today. And there we have a Burchell's starling, another one of our more common birds, and you can see that lovely shiny iridescence. Quite a beautiful bird, but with a not a very melodic voice. And in the distance we can hear a lot of long-tailed shrikes or magpie shrikes calling, and just above that starling there is a magpie shrike. Right in the top left, so middle branch there. There we go, Bryan. You go up.
There we go.
There we go, you got him. Little magpie shrike or long-tailed shrike. So they live in flocks that are actually quite territorial and will defend the areas that they feed against other magpie shrikes. Oh, well, the birds definitely playing along a lot better than the leopards. So while we're still in search of all of those, we'll definitely keep looking at the birds. I will also keep a lookout for some medicinal flowers that we haven't seen before, and we can work on our wild pharmacy. Oh, we're just in the wrong place. Let me just go forward a little bit, try and get the sun. Oh, and they've flown. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Let's see where they go. They disappeared. There was some green wood hoopoes, but they've carried on flying past. I was hoping they were going to land in that marula tree. While we continue on, we're going to cross back to Jamie, who's with some other birds. So it looks like it is definitely a birding morning so far.
Alrighty, well, apart from one camera-shy giraffe at Buffelshoek Dam, it's the place to be if we want to continue our search for birds this morning. Well, we'll start with the saddle-billed stork. And that looks to me like it has a yellow eye, making it a female. I'm not going to test you anymore on that. I know that you all know that off by heart. But both the female and the male are here. Catching tilapia and other fishes that are swimming around the edge of the dam. Wading right in there. Here we go, we've got Egyptian geese. And you can hear all of the bird life that's around us as well. Here's the male stork off to the left, who is right down almost to his belly if we have a look there. Look at how deep he's gone. Oh, I think he's changed his mind. That might have been a little bit much. Did he catch something? No, just sifting through. There he goes, stabbing with that incredibly sensitive beak. Definitely one of the most striking storks. Just look at the way the black and the yellow, oh, we got something there. The black and the red and the yellow all contrast against the white there. They are beautiful birds. And since we're adding to our birding list, if we scoot along the side to just behind the Egyptian geese, there's another little bird that is off to the right of him. Oh, he's right down again. Egyptian geese fluttering out of the way. And back onto the bank where he can feed at the back. Munching something else there. And I'm sure you can hear a lot of bird life as well around us. Now I'm not sure. Does it count if we call them as herd? Maybe not. Maybe we have to see them. But I can tell you I can hear a black-crowned chagra. I can hear a chin-spot batis. The go-away bird's calling. And there's a hammerkorp right on the far edge there. There he is. A much more vigorous approach than the saddle-billed, rushing around. And I'm sure this is the same hammerkorp that we see fairly regularly. And he's probably catching all kinds of freshwater arthropods, as well as the little fish that are of no interest to the saddle-billed. And to his right, on the right of your screen, running across into the middle, is a blacksmith lapwing. So what's that? That's 4 species, 5 species already, just by sitting right next to a dam. What else have we got? I can hear a kingfisher. Oh, I think I can see the kingfisher. I'm going to have to shift back, though, to be able to show you. It's going to come out soon, though. Let's go back a little bit so we can see the kingfisher. Looks like a pied kingfisher from where I'm sitting.
Welcome back, everyone. It seems like the gremlins are popping their heads from wherever gremlins live this morning, so sorry about that, but welcome back with us. Oh, it's better spotted. It sounded like a little white-bellied sunbird. You can hear him. So quickly. Spotted something else. Oh, excuse me. Oh, my binoculars. All that disappeared. We've got some other birds up ahead. Going above me. Oh, he's flown off. That is the challenge with birds. See them as well. White-bellied sunbird somewhere here. It sounds a bit too far away to see, so we'll carry on. we've got our next bird. Sorry about that, we always went for a drainage line. And there we've got a Cape Glossy starling. And it's eating some ants on the ground and it's just popped up into the tree and cleaning its beak after its breakfast. And there's that lovely iridescence you get in the starling family. Also another one of the more common birds we get. Who knows, maybe we might find our birders out there a new bird species. I think the best list I've heard of so far is around 150 birds seen so far on the live drives, and that is incredible. Let's pop down back onto the road to look for some more food. Disappeared into the grass. Oh, back onto the road. Our zoomies, Siberia, has said, well, she's going to help us this morning. She's going to keep an eye out on the Juma Dam camp. Well, Siberia seems to see that we think alike. I'm actually on my way towards the Juma Dam right now, so you'll be seeing us shortly. So we chatted about hornbills nesting a little bit earlier, and I've mentioned that the female loses all its feathers, and Claire from New York would like to know, are there any theories about why that happens? Well, Claire, not that I know, but I think we can safely assume it's to line the nest, so it makes a very nice, comfortable nesting spot for her and for the chicks once they're born. To look for our feathered friends. We're going to cross across to Jeremy, who's got something slightly larger than any of the birds we find here.
And you are back on Jigger, and oh no, sorry, I'm on Wendy this morning. Well, look what we found. They're about to disappear into a really, really thick drainage line, but we've stumbled upon a herd of elephants. I'm hoping they're going to stick around just that little bit longer, maybe not disappear. I know from experience and from practice that going into this drainage line is a no-go. And unfortunately, it looks as though they're heading in the direction of Nyala Road North, which ends up as a bit of a signal black hole out here. But we do have some slowly disappearing off. I think we just caught the tail end of the herd, so to speak. Certainly at the moment all we're seeing is tails and bottoms. And the breeze has picked up tremendously. Hello, elephants. I'm going to try and stay with them. But unfortunately, I think we might lose them very, very soon. But you never know, they might pop out again. They could even be on their way towards Brent. It's in the right general direction. We're sitting probably about 1.5 kilometers away from where he is now with those struggling catfish. We try and see if we can get a nice view of them before they disappear. I think though we might be losing them. They have kindly deposited a roadblock and left us. It's Very inconsiderate. Try and do this as carefully and as quietly as possible. I think our bottoms are going to disappear off into the drainage line. At the moment all we've got is a swishing tail. Now you probably can't hear it, but I could actually hear that tail swishing through the air, making a sound almost like a whip swishing. Serving as a very useful fly swatter. Looks as though they've been in the water. Some of them are looking a little bit damp. Oh, big stretch up. You can see as that ellie flaps its ears, all of those blood vessels running through them. Look at that there, they're catching the light. And those ears have such an incredible capillary network within them. It's like having a giant fan on either side of your head. A perfect way to cool down. Oh, that one's got some very tatty ears. And those would have been caused by hooking them on thorns, and then just a little bit of infection makes it a bit bigger each time, and that kind of cut will be with it for the rest of its life. There's a tiny little face peering through the bushes. I'm hoping it's going to pop out. It's walking just behind this female, but I think we won't be able to see him yet. I don't want to move and risk them disappearing off into the drainage line. Come on, little one. Come out. I can see you munching there. Just tucked away in there. Gonna shuffle fractionally forward to see if you can see it. Might be able to get a little bit of a view of the calf. There's quite a few of them. Come on, Bubba. Nope. Not interested in being seen. Disappearing off. Oh well. One of the things of a live safari is that The animals don't always want to play along with the way the camera works, especially now in summer where it's extra thick. We'll do one more loop just to see if maybe we can get a bit of a visual of them. But I'm going to have to back out of this block first. And let's see if we can get a last visual of them as they disappear off into the drainage line. You'll have to bear with me a moment as I loop out of here. Bit of a tricky block. Out of my leg. The thing about off-roading is that you acquire all kinds of plant material, especially after a wild dog sighting, and it somehow makes itself into the seat to surprise you at unexpected moments. Let's dodge these silver cluster leaves. I don't think we're going to get a visual of them from here, unfortunately. They've all disappeared down into quite a thick drainage line. We'll leave them be for now and continue on our search along Guari Pan Road. To watch the elephants' behavior over the last few days on Juma and the surroundings. All of a sudden we were visited by an influx of 5-6 herds easily, and they came through, pushed over quite a few trees and then left again, and now we've only got the sort of 1 or 2 hanging around. And I mentioned this before, but I would love to know how they decide where they're going. Just having a look at this very impressive spider web. Now I know that Brent was talking about spider webs earlier. I'm not sure if he touched on this particular species. A very unusual type of spider. So the big wide nest that we're looking at, or the big wide web at least, the big structure, that's their hunting web, designed clearly to catch flying insects that come through with nice strong anchor strands, those thick strands of silk that you see. And I've seen a blue waxbill bird caught in one of these before. And just below that, at the base, is a thick ball of silk and leaves. And this is a community web spider, or a community nest spider. One of the only sociable spiders that we get out here. And essentially, they all have, that little nest will contain maybe 100 or so of these tiny little spiders. And they have hunting parties. So when something flies into the web and gets trapped there, then the hunting party will go out and collect it and bring it back into the main body of the web and share it with all of the spiders within there. And that's hugely, hugely unusual in the spider world. It's almost like a termite or an ant's nest where each insect has a defined role. But for spiders, this is pretty much unheard of. We all know how fairly solitary they are. And even males run a tremendous risk in terms of courting the female and trying to get him to mate with her. So community nest spiders are a completely different kettle of fish. And we're going to see them more and more now. We see them throughout winter, just as the sort of base part of the nest. But they start to come out and weave those nice big hunting webs to trap flying insects that come through. And the type of material that they use, that silk, is incredible. The strongest that we get is the golden orb web spider. But if you were to weave something out of the silk that they use as the anchor strands, and if you were to double it up and double it up and double it up until it's about the thickness of a pencil, or maybe the thickness of my index finger, you get to the point, good morning, you would get to the point that it could hold back one of the commercial jet planes. It's so incredibly strong, that tensile strength. Good morning, Nyala. Looking very happy with life, tails wagging. Tiny little one at the back. There we go, just like we discussed earlier. Getting as much feeding in as they can before the temperatures start to rise. Oh, and there's a tiny baby there. Sure, he's coming through. Hello. Yes, you are adorable. Are the flies bugging you? I mean, nyala have large ears at the best of times, but that's just ridiculous. Look at them flapping away. Oh, but you are very cute. This little one is probably about a month old, maybe even less. Amazing how stable they are on their feet from the beginning. Complete with, they're just such perfect mini replicas of their mothers. Complete with that fluffy tail. Very sweet. Let's see if we can shift forward and get another really sweet view of that little thing. That's very tiny. We're seeing lots and lots of baby nyala at the moment. Here we go. Those ears going furiously. Shame, I think it's being quite heavily targeted by flies. And maybe ticks as well. Itchy. Oh. Disappearing off to hide behind the safety of mom. Let's just see if maybe baby's going to come out. Now, I mentioned before that the camp that I used to work at, and it's very common to see nyala in all of the gardens, and there used to be a little nyala lamb. Now, we don't quite know why the mother was so, I don't want to call her bad, but she left it alone a lot of the time. It would often be quite alone in our garden, and Lexi, this was before Lexi's time, so she couldn't even keep it company. And this little thing used to wander around our garden, and they make a sound like sheep, the babies. They bar. Meh. Eh. The little ones, to call to their mothers. And it used to wander round and round the house, calling to its mother. We thought at first the mom was dead, But all of a sudden then she'd arrive and feed it and then disappear off again. It was almost like we were a babysitting company. And it got to the point that this little thing became so used to people that it would follow you around. And I remember walking across the lawn with a bottle of conditioner, hair conditioner. And I stopped to talk to somebody, and all of a sudden I felt something trying to suck on the bottle of hair conditioner. Anyway, you'll be happy to know that despite the mothering skills of that particular nyala, that baby made it all the way to adulthood, and we saw it wandering around a year later with mom. So it survived, quite possibly because mom had left it in our garden. And the nyala were very useful in that garden as a way of alerting us to whenever there was a leopard walking through. And we did actually once have a leopard lying on the volleyball court. We heard them all frantically barking, and I put Lexi on a leash just because I had a feeling that they were shouting at something serious. And I walked around the corner and there was a leopard sleeping in the sand of our volleyball court and having a bit of a roll around before disappearing off. Alright, cute thing. I think let us continue on our way. Good luck out here. It's a difficult world, especially for a little baby nyala like you. Okay, let us head out and see what else we can find in the way of little spring babies and other things. And speaking of springtime babies, I haven't seen all that many signs of Karula around here. This is where we suspected she might be hiding cubs, but I haven't seen her tracks for about a week now in this area, so she might have moved them. If she does have cubs, she might have shifted them somewhere else. We'll just have to wait to find out. Amazing to see all of the different adaptations of the spiders that we see. Going back to that big pond community nest spider that we saw. Now, we've got those living together in a group with their big catchment web. We get funnel web spiders out here. We get trapdoor or similar to trapdoor spiders out here as well. Then one of them that doesn't use a web as a method of catching food, but in fact goes out and hunts its own, is something that Anna-Marie was asking about. So it's essentially the South African equivalent of a tarantula. And Anna-Marie, that is known as a baboon spider. The reason it's called a baboon spider, in theory, and I don't think this really plays out in real life, but in theory it's known as a baboon spider because it's meant to look like the fingers of a baboon. They're very, very large, just like tarantulas. They can grow right up to sort of that big. Big, thick, strong bodies with very, very strong jaws, or chelicera, as they're known, and mandibles. And instead of operating on a web system, they're one of the more They're thought to be one of the more primitive or the earliest examples of the spiders, and they go out and they actively hunt their food. And they're definitely one of my favorites to see. I've always really liked them. I actually think they're quite cute looking. They're fluffy, and I've had them crawl on me before. I've held a couple before. And they are very, very pretty to look at. And there's one that's known as the golden baboon spider that is almost completely restricted to the Hoedspruit area. It's basically endemic to a tiny, tiny portion of the country, and you don't find it anywhere else in the world. And because of that, it is one of the most heavily protected species of spider that you get out here. And whenever there's any kind of building site or anything like that that happens around here, you have to double check that there's no sign of them digging their holes. Because a hole of a baboon spider, they start building as they grow up, and they excavate it to get bigger and bigger. So if you destroy that hole that they return to every single day, because they're nocturnal, then there's a very good chance that you could actually kill the spider. They're built to fit specifically into that hole. And I'm always keeping an eye out for them. There's something that would be fun, really great fun to look for on our bushwalks. Because if you get to a nice big open baboon spider's hole and you can see that it's active because it's lined with silk, and you know that that spider is home, and if you just ever so carefully trace the edges with a blade of grass like you're an insect, then it will grab it and you can pull it out without stressing it out at all. It's like fishing for spiders. And they pop out, and it's incredible because you see the tiny hole and you imagine that the spider will be about the same size, and all of a sudden this enormous thing just comes out. The biggest one I've ever fished out to show volunteers and guests was probably about that big. Absolutely enormous. And there's a couple of different species. There's the horned baboon spider, the golden baboon spider. There's quite a few of them around. And they can live up to 20 years or longer.
We decided to come across to Arathusa to see what's going on here. So we and maybe check the drainage lines here. Well, maybe we can find some leopard tracks, or hopefully some lion tracks. Other than that, we're going to house. Swapped hats for the wide brim sun hat, and it is already very warm, and we started off the morning over 100 degrees Fahrenheit today, 41 degrees Celsius. Just going to be on the game drive comms, see whether there's an update for Arathusa this morning. Morning stations, Brent from WildEarth again. Is anyone copying it? By 5-5. Copy, thanks very much. So, quiet on Arathusa, but it sounds like the Birminghams are further to the west, so hopefully they will start meandering back to the east at some point. So let's head down to the Marakeni drainage line nice big trees, a bit of shade, great area for birding, and also a great area for leopard. As it's warming up, I think our best birding option is going to be in the drainage line. Smell elephants, but there's so many elephants around at the moment. Looks like even the birds are taking a break, it's getting so warm. Checking for tracks. You never know what might be out there. And it looks like no one's worked this area yet this morning. And they've all rushed off to go see the Birmingham boys. So we've got this whole northwestern section of Arathusa to ourselves. As it warms up, obviously the snakes are getting more and more active, and John in California is wondering when are the rock pythons are going to come out to play. John, I'm quite sure they are already out to play. It's finding them is a completely different kettle of fish, and I'm sure hopefully over the next warm months we are going to be able to find some more of our reptilian friends. Down into the Marakene drainage now. Is changing a little bit. We're getting a little bit more quarries as we head down towards the drainage line. Bryan and I are going to quite enjoy being in the cool of the drainage line. It is already scorching. Almost time for a reapplication of sunscreen. Summer's going to be scary. Yes, summer is going to be scary. But fortunately, in not too long a time, we will be going out earlier and earlier in the morning and later in the evening. descend into the drainage line now. Also has liked this area a lot in the past, and we haven't seen her for a while. Maybe we'll find her tracks in the cool of the drainage line. We can find some birds shortly. Even the birds are few and far between this morning. And you can see these wonderful thickets around us as we drive down this riverbed. A great spot for a leopard to have a snooze. Here this morning. The drainage line. We're going to cross back across to Jamie, who's got something with a heartbeat at least.
And it seems as though we've found a great deal of the general game population in one particular corner of Djuma. We've got our little waterbuck bateleur herd. You can see this one in the front there with tiny little horns. He's still growing. It's probably only about a year old, just over. Only just left the safety of his mother's side and had to move in with some of the bigger males that are around us. Luckily he's got plenty of company though to keep him safe and keep a watchful eye on things. There's also a load of impala, and just quickly before I move forward to go and see these waterbuck and the zebra that are there as well, got one of the biggest steenbok I think I've seen. He's quite large. He's shifted away a little bit, but hopefully we can get a view of him. There he is, looking intently in the direction of the other animals that are moving through. In thick bush like this, we very often see the little antelope staring intently in the direction of something because they can't quite see what it is. So they, rather than risk it being a predator, they'd stop and double check all the time. And you're going to be seeing it more and more with them. The impala are doing it a lot. Oh, there he goes, dashed off. Since he's gone, we can shift forward a bit. We've actually got a nice breeding herd of waterbuck here as well. Just seen a female come through. So maybe the young males are with their mothers as well. Here goes a female. Haven't seen a female waterbuck in quite a while, so it's nice to see them. Let me shuffle forward a bit so that we can get that typical pungent smell of waterbuck. This is the biggest herd of waterbuck I think I've seen. There's about 20 of them here, along with a whole herd of zebra and a whole herd of impala. Good morning, fluffy creatures. See if we could get a quick view of that zebra on the termite mound off to the left, and then maybe have a look at how many animals are around us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10. Oh, there's the smell of the waterbuck. Just hit me. A musky, wet dog is probably the closest way to describe it. Zebra is actually licking the soil of the termite mound. He's not grazing. He's practicing what's known as geophagia, or geophagy. So he's licking the nutrients from the soil that have been brought up by the termites. Look at all the animals. And they've grouped together like this because it's an extra way of keeping an eye out for threats, especially on a windy day like today. It's incredibly breezy. Nice big waterbuck cow. Look how beautiful she is in the morning light. I wonder how they're going to be feeling this afternoon at midday with temperatures of 41 degrees. It's actually quite astounding, even though we know that they like to live around watery areas. It's still astounding that there's an animal like this fluffy, that looks like it's designed to live in the coldest possible climate with all that insulation. The structure of the fur is actually quite loose, and it's a way of keeping them warm when they're damp, but still interesting to see. This young male has got to the point of just being old enough to be interested in the ladies, but not quite sure how to go about it. She's also quite young, a young female. There's a bit of teenage love happening there. He's a bit inept though. Not quite sure how it all works. Oh, he tried. He tried his luck. She was not having any of it. He's decided that eating might be a little bit more interesting in this respect. It's nice to see such a mixed herd. There's a really nice big breeding herd with individuals of all ages and females, and then there's 1 or 2 big males shuffling around in the back. I've counted, wait, hold on one moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, at least 14 waterbuck, all hiding around. It's very dense in here, but they're all around. And grey hornbill whistling in the background. Apparently this is the corner of Djuma to be at if you're a grazing animal. She goes, following on with the rest of the herd. And whilst they get their morning breakfast feeding done, I believe that Brent has a couple of giraffe to show you. So let us head across there and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back. Apart from the drainage line being devoid of birds and other animals, we have found a male and a female giraffe just on the edge of the drainage line, and they are moving, so we're going to move along with them a little bit. Nice, there's so many giraffe around at the moment. I know they're a firm favorite of quite a few of our viewers, so I'm sure you guys will be happy. So we've got two females. Where did the male go? Gap through the bush. There's a very strong wind at the moment, which is causing them to be a little bit nervous, so they are moving off. Hopefully they stop for a feed on the way. Can see how strong the wind is today, gusting around, and that'll make a lot of animals quite nervous. You're listening intently, looking back towards the drainage line. They are taking advantage of the nice fresh shoots. So there's a parasitic plant that occurs here in the bush, and we have spoken about it a few times, and it makes really, really good food, but it is quite inaccessible to the majority of the species. And giraffe is one of the only species that can access it easily and regularly. So who can remember what the name of that plant is? So it's a parasitic plant that grows in other trees, and giraffe are one of the only animals that are able to take advantage of it regularly. And if you can remember the name of that plant, send your answers through to questions at WildEarth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. As those giraffes move off, we're going to do the same. We'll go check on the vulture's nest. I'm hoping that the baby will be a bit more boisterous now and a bit bigger, so we might be able to see it a bit better. But it is already hot and windy, so it might be fast asleep because Mom has already gone off in search of carrion. Doing quite a lot of medicinal plants recently, and with all the wildflowers coming out. And Angie from Ohio says she absolutely loves it, being in the medical field, and she wonders, does the purple cone plant occur here? Angie, not that I'm aware of, the purple cone flower. If it does, it might be introduced, but I will have a look in my book. I haven't ever come across a flower called the purple cone flower since I've been out here. If you know the beginning of the Latin name, or the family name, for example, with acacia would be the first for the tree, if you can send that through, we might have a relative or an African version of it, but I won't be able to say it with the common name. But so if you send through the beginning of the Latin name, I will be able to tell you whether we have a representative of that family out here. wind is making the birding quite difficult as well. Disappearing chin spot bat is what we'll call that one. Up to that vulture's nest now. It's not too far from here. And I'm trying to see if the vulture's at home. Might not be. Hot and windy, might already be riding the thermals. It's that my favorite vulture's nest here. It's the one that you sort of take a risk every time you drive under it, because it's directly above a road. And so far we've been lucky not to be bombed upon, but that could change. I'm always very careful when I drive under there, and I make sure the cameraman's side is where we place the sort of bomb bay doors, and I try to keep myself on the other side out of the way.
That's unlucky for some, lucky for others.
There we go, as Bryan says, unlucky for some, lucky for others. But knowing enough about a vulture's diet, I don't know if that's lucky for anyone. We're nearly there now. And it looks like someone might be at home. Well, at least it's another bird to our bird list, I think. That 50 was quite a big call to start off with, but it looks like one of the adult vultures is still at home. But with all the greenery, we can see less of that nest now. Here we go, white-backed vulture. And unfortunately, with all the leaves and stuff like that, it's going to be incredibly difficult to spot the youngster. And to show you how fast the wind is actually blowing at the moment, if we go off to the left there, Bryan, you can see that windmill, that old farm windmill. And obviously not pumping water, not attached to anything anymore, but it is hurtling. So, very, very windy this morning, which can make the birding a little difficult. But nice to see that the vulture is still utilizing the same nest. And now it's time to do the crossing. And speed quickly. Just in case, there we go, we're through, we're safe, no bombs away. And a very well done to Lily Chris and Donna, who got the name of the parasitic plant that giraffe are able to take advantage of, which is really good nutrient food. It is mistletoe. As we're about to go through a little dip here, so we might experience a little bit of signal breakup, so just bear with us as we pass through. You can see how fast this old windmill is going, and if we come down, Brian, you see and zoom in on that pipe that's going up and down attached to the loose chain there. That there. So you can see how it goes up and down. So that chain would have originally been attached to a very basic form of pump, and that up and down motion is what have drawn the water out of the ground. Obviously this one needs a bit of oil and TLC to make it work, but you could probably get it to work without too much effort. But solar water pumps and things like that have taken the place of windmills all over Africa now. Far more cost effective and efficient than a windmill. Of course, we've got different types of windmills, so to speak, and wind farms that are now producing electricity. The big push for that in the Western Cape of South Africa. It's quite a controversial one. Although wind energy is a lot inferior, very good. Those big wind turbines do kill a lot of birds, and there's quite a lot of arguments all around the world whether the amount of electricity produced by them as opposed to the cost of making and fossil fuels used in the cost of making them and fossil fuels used in making them, whether it is actually a viable long-term renewable energy resource. But I think only time will tell that one. So the last we heard, the Salala Pride have crossed away from us. They went further to the west. So we've got some lion tracks here. I'm just going to get a hold of the guys on the Game Drive channel to see if anyone followed up on these tracks already this morning. So I'll get Bryan to show you the tracks. Where's the nice one? In the sunlight there. And just make out the lion tracks. The light's a bit harsh at the moment, so we will try to find out whether anyone's followed. I think this could be the Salala Pride, but from what I heard, they seem to have thought they went a different direction. Or maybe these are different lions. Okay, let me get hold of the radio. Congratulations, this is Ngala and Konzo heading northwest on 2nd Windmill Road. Confirm, has anyone followed up on the Tsalala animals this morning? Copy, thanks very much, Shawnee. So, they have found them, and interesting, they are on the same property that the Birmingham boys are on at the moment. So, hopefully for those lines, they don't bump into the Birmingham boys. I can't hear how far apart they are. I think the Birminghams are in the south, and the Tsalalas are further in the north. So we will keep an interested ear out to see if there are any developments with those two different groups of lions. Well, I think let's go have a quick look at the Arathusa Dam, and then if no luck there, let's start heading back towards Jumo, because it doesn't seem that there's very much general game around in Arathusa this morning, and hopefully we can find some more on Jumo. So as we make our way towards the Arathusa waterhole, Siberia and the Zumi would really like to see a moorhen, if possible. Siberia, I think it's going to be a bit of a call at the moment with that water being so low, but there is always a chance. You never know what might arise. Hopefully we might find some elephants as it heats up, heading to have a quenching drink at the Arathusa Dam. We're nearly there. Once we pop out of this mixed woodland here, we should be right at the water's edge in no more than a few minutes. It does look like at least there are animals towards the waterhole. I think I can see some impala through the gap, some waterbuck. Oh, there's some waterbuck having a nice quenching drink. big group of waterbuck around. Some of them actually in the water. Bryan, quickly, bird perched atop the Arathusa lightning conductor is not one we see too often. It is a pied crow. So there's an interesting bird species, not one we see too often. Could be a new one for a few people. An African pied crow. And obviously the hippos are present and accounted for. And there we can hear that pied crow calling quack, 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 quack. And impala coming to join the waterbuck for a drink. And some confused impala who think rutting season's still on. Absolute pandemonium going on. Impala chasing each other all over the place. And the waterbuck just standing there thinking, what are these creatures up to? It's amazing, one male seems to set everyone off. And incoming back from the right. Oh. Much pandemonium being caused by the male impala. A little bit late for the rutting season though. And the gosling family, or the goose family, is still present. And let's see, impala seem to have calmed down a bit. Let's see how many of the goslings are still here. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I can see. One, 2, 3, 4, 6. There were 7 last time I was here. And they possibly lost one during the night. So we've got 4 out front, and then there are 2 or 3 there, right? There are 3. Ah, so all 7, all present and accounted for. And a little bit off to the left of them is another bird for the bird list, a blacksmith lapwing. And unfortunately, Siberia, no more hens. Well, it looks like the waterbuck have finished their morning drink and are heading off. It doesn't even look like the jacanas are around this morning. Oh no, there's one. So on the opposite bank, we'll try to show you. It could be a bit far for the camera. It's in that little corner there, right? Around there. You can just make out there's the African jacana, and he's chasing a little common sandpiper. There's two species. And oh, speaking about jacanas, let's come. What's that? I wonder where his babies are. They're probably very close by. And we come back to the lapwing, Bryan. And just behind him, you see there's a little wader with yellow legs and a black beak walking past that elephant dung. Now, there's one for you guys to identify. Who can tell me which little wader this is? So the yellow legs and the very spotty wings are the giveaways. As well, look, it's got a white eye stripe. And a very distinct shoulder. Oops, sorry. So some of these little waders can be quite tricky to identify, but if you know which one this is, please send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So, very pretty little guy. Remember the yellow legs? So, we've got some birds, and some birds we don't see too often, so that's nice. The African pied crows and this little wader that I'm going to get you guys to identify. And we're going to move along and see what else we can find. Back after their drink, sitting out in the open area. There's some of the male impala who were causing all that havoc earlier behind them. All calm now. Oh, always funny thing about male impala. The slightest thing can sometimes set them off. you guys are really on the ball. Siberia has got it correct this morning. It is a common green shank or a green shank. And there's number 4. That is it there. And quite spotty wings. There's greenish yellow legs and that white circle around the eye. Some of the other little waders that can get quite confusing with the green shank. Probably the most easy one to be confused is the wood sandpiper, but it is far more spotty. The bill is not as long and it has a very distinct white eye stripe. And the other is the more common one that we will see from time to time is the common sandpiper, which lacks the spots but has that very, very distinct white shoulder. And that almost, when we were learning birding as little kids, we got told to see the sea to tell you it was a common sandpiper. But well done to Siberia for the common green shank. Okay, let's move along. So while we continue on and see what else we can find, we're going to cross across to Jamie, who's been getting some serious morning exercise with a car tire that's nearly the same size as she is.
Once again, we are back out on the road with 4 fully functioning tires now. But yes, we're taken by surprise by a little bit of a flat tire, not a little bit, a very flat tire on our back right. Luckily, we were in a really nice flat position, unlike last time where we were sort of positioned at an angle on Buffelshoek cut line. At least this time we had plenty of time to spare, and wildebeest very kindly helped me out a great deal. It was definitely a joint tire changing effort.
Against union regulations,
The wildebeest says it's against union regulations, but it's okay, he's going to let it slide this time, for which I'm most grateful. And I think with a little bit of practice we could probably become like a Formula 1 pit team. Or maybe not. Leopard track. Let's go see. On which side? This? Hyena. No problem. There's hyenas tracks all over this place. Been frantically checking. They've caught me out about 5 times this morning. Frantically checking, especially now with the sun like it is at the moment. You just see paw tracks and immediately have to go back and double check. They've been up and down and all around here. It's interesting because we're quite, we know that hyenas cover huge differences. We're probably about, oh no, not a sycamore. A flat tire causer, which I'm going to avoid at all costs now because otherwise we're in deep trouble. I don't have 2 flats on a game drive. First of all, it leaves you rather stranded, but second of all, I'd never hear the end of it, I'm sure. At least it's dry and easy to change tires. When it starts to pour with rain and the ground gets all muddy and you try and put a jack down, you jack it up, but instead of the car going up, the jack goes down into the mud. And that's when you need to start getting inventive with spades and bits of planks of wood and anything else you could do to increase the surface area. I've made my way all the way from Mumba Road, where Brent had those tracks of Umvula yesterday, and across to Treehouse Dams, just checking very thoroughly in the drainage line. Probability dictates there must be a leopard somewhere on Djuma. I'm still searching for Karula. I've been searching for her for ages. But between her and Shadow, they keep eluding me somehow. She'll probably pop out at Buffelshoek Dam in the next hour or so, just because I've left that area. Go and have a look at what's cracking on Treehouse. Not much. And we've reached the level of being asked questions by famous bands, or at least people with band names. And Coldplay, you want to know what you need to major in to become a guide, like the rest of us. Well, that's a curious one. Basically, the important part is training. I majored in law. I have a law degree. As you can see, that went incredibly well for me. It was obviously my calling, as here I am out in the bush. But essentially what you need to do is you need to do some kind of training course in nature guiding. You need to rack up as much time spent out and about. There's quite a lot of learning involved. There are so many subjects that you need to cover. The most obvious one being mammal behavior, like these, being able to look at these bachelor herd of impala and talk about them for ages. But then there's also all kinds of things. There's weather, there's soil, there's geography, there's tracks, all kinds of things along those lines. Trees, plants, grasses, birds. It's all about collecting knowledge as much as you can and doing as much reading as you can. There are official qualifications. You do have to do a qualification through either the local government qualifying body, not qualificating, that's not a word. Local government qualifying body, which is now known as CATSETA, or you can do it through what is known as FGAZA, which is the Field Guides Association of South Africa. And both of those come with different levels of qualification. So you can do the most basic and start to guide and then work further from there. And then there's different subjects you can start to specialize once you do that. So you can specialize in being a walking guide, you can specialize in birds, in flowers. There's all kinds of things that you can then find to match your interests, your own personal interests. And the most important thing, of course, in terms of being a guide, is you have to have that enthusiasm and love for the bush, because there's just so much to learn that it's a constant process. Qualifying, you get there, you can do the exams and get through it with quite a lot of intensive learning, and then from there it's all about conducting your own education and learning as much as you can whilst you do it. And somebody like Brent, who's got essentially spent his entire childhood in the bush, racking up experience hours, is something that absolutely cannot be undervalued. And that's why I feel like I'm so fortunate to be working with a team I am working with, because there are a collection of incredibly qualified guides. Sorry, I'm just looking at that hole in the tree there. I'm wondering what might live there. Now it's quite clear to me that this place burnt. There must have been a fire here in the last 2 years. And interestingly, it went into the base of this tree, but it hasn't killed the tree. The tree is still alive. It's a silver cluster leaf. It's taking a little bit longer than the rest of them to get its leaves, but it is still alive. And I think that's because the bits of fire that went through there only really hollowed out the heartwood of the tree, and it left that all-important bark system intact, so the tree can still carry nutrients up and about from it. Also, judging by the mud stains there, because it is right next to Treehouse Dam, it's also served as a rubbing post. But I would be very curious to know, it's a perfect snake hole. It's a little bit low, probably, for something like a bird to nest in, just because it would make the chicks very, very vulnerable. But I always love checking out various holes. You go to areas sort of towards the northwestern part of the country, and I'm sure you've all heard about those incredible baobab trees that exist up there. You don't get them down here. It's completely the wrong habitat, but they are hollowed out all the way through, especially those 1,000-year-old trees. You can look right inside them. And I love sticking my head in there with a torch and having a look. I always do so carefully because you just never know what's going to come shooting out and fly at your head. I've had owls, I've had bats. The wonderful news is that Brent's persistence around the Arathusa waterhole has paid off. And it seems as though the elephants are going to come down and drink there. So let's head across and see that wonderful sight, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
So welcome back, everyone. As we were leaving the Arathusa waterhole, we came across a herd of elephants that were heading this way, so I'm hoping they're going to come for a drink. So we've jumped up ahead of them, and we are waiting now on the edge of the water as the elephants start appearing from the drainage line. There we go. Hopefully they're in the mood for a mud bath. I can see who's going to be first. I wonder if it's going to be one of the young bulls who starts the charge for the water. At the moment, all feeding right on the edge of that. Those thickets. We'll move forward a skosh. We will position to see where they go once they start heading for the water. We've got some nyala also that have popped out of the shadows on the edge and making their way across the open ground at the moment. So, as we wait for these ellies to appear and hopefully come and drink, we've got an interesting question from Ruth in Costa Rica. Is what is the width of an elephant's ear? And obviously that, Ruth, depends on the size of the elephant, but a big bull elephant probably could easily get to a meter and a half across. And I think the rest is varying size, but probably a big female around 1.2 meters. I think even a very big male might even push further than that. It seems like they're playing games with me. They were walking very determinedly towards the water when we first found them, and now that they've got close, they've sort of stopped in the trees on the edge of the drainage line that flows into the Arathusa Dam. But we shall wait patiently. I really hope they decide to go have some fun in the mud. So we can see one there, and if we go slightly to the left there, Brian, you just see that, there you go, popping out. You just see those tusks on the trunk from behind the quarry. Who's going to be the first to break into a water walk? I saw quite a few youngsters, so they might even decide to chase some impalas or nyalas. There we go. Young bull, he's definitely one to watch when it comes to chasing others. There we go. Starting to break stride. I love it when they get close to the water and they just start speeding up. And it looks like those nyala are in for a chase. Quite a high percentage of young boys here. Oh, there we go. On the left. Started that little jog towards the water. And just to keep me guessing where, and now I've also got to try to figure out where they're going to go drink. So on the far right, it's a nice big adult cow. And then, as I said, high percentage of young boys. Hello, little boys. Okay, we're going to move around now. See where they're going to drink. They're not going straight to this corner. Just going to get Bryan nice and opposite them, a little bit higher up, and in the background we'll see Arathusa Safari Lodge. So this is one of those wonderful things you get treated to on an African safari, and animals even coming to you. If you had a sleep in this morning and sitting on the deck in front of your room, and a lovely herd of elephants coming down to drink. They still haven't decided where's the best spot yet, so they might get us moving again. And we're going to walk 5 feet from the car. Three young boys at the back here. So not too interested in drinking at the moment. Gonna get us on the move again and see where they're off to next. And they have disturbed the Egyptian goose family. Oh, it looks like it's been decided by the big female. That's the spot. How's that, Bryan? So unfortunately the sun's directly behind them. Now, there's a possibility with a bunch of young boys like this little herd's got that there might be some swimming. Young elephant bulls are quite big fans of the water. It looks like they might have drunk quite recently. They don't really excited to drink, so they could have drunk probably last night. But it is getting hot, and elephants do love the water when it's warm. Watching those Ellies drink, I think I'm going to do the same. I'm thirsty all of a sudden. Fortunately, my water's a little bit cleaner than the Arathusa Dam. There seem to be a huge amount of elephants in general just around between Arathusa and Juma at the moment, and it's so nice to have them here because we definitely do go through patches where the eddies are few and far between, but that's how the bush copes with having such a massive animal in it. They move between different areas and will put pressure on different plant groups at different times of the year in different areas. There we go, the first young bull looking to go a little bit deeper. Come on, boys, go for a swim. The light is quite bad this side. Now that they're a little bit more stationary, I'm going to try go onto the other side of them so you guys can get some better view slightly, not so blown out with that harsh African sun. Go, that's a bit better. And the big cow's got an itchy ear and she's using a trunk to scratch the back of her ears. Very nice and relaxed little breeding herd. But as I said, dominated by bulls, so let's just try and have a look. So we've got the adult female on the far right, within shot at the moment. And the smallest ellie next to her looks like another little boy. Then these two that we can see quite clearly closest to us, also little boys. There might only be one girl in this group. But she'll definitely be the... Oh no, there's another little female there. So there's two females that I can see, and the rest look to be boys. So that slightly bigger young bull there, using his trunk to sniff between the other's legs. That other one on the other side of him is a female. So sometimes we see those ellies spray water or mud all over themselves to keep cool. And Penny Pine is wondering whether I've ever been sprayed by an elephant. Penny, I actually have quite a few times in my many years in the bush, and I've spent a lot of time in areas where there are an incredible amount of elephants. And I've been sprayed quite a few times. In the Sabi Sands, at least 15. And you can see that big female has moved off into the front there, and now the rest of the ellies will follow. So definitely the matriarch. Now they look like they're going to head off into the drainage line on the other side of the dam wall. Nice, cool, lots of lush green vegetable matter to feed on. And there the last two of the boys are going to disappear. And we're going to do the same. We're going to start heading a bit further to the east and see what's happening back on Juma. So while we start moving, we're going to cross back across to Jamie, see what she's been up to. Hopefully she hasn't had any more flat tires.
Luckily, no more flat tires, as far as I can see. We seem to be good to go still. It would have been quite impressive if I've managed to get a flat tire, because I haven't moved off the road since we last spoke. But you never know, sometimes they appear in the most mysterious of ways. It's funny how you can do a wild dog sighting and race through the block and come out the other side completely unscathed, and then go, what was it? It was about 10 meters off the road to go and say hello to some elephants and puncture a tire. It is just luck of the draw and remembering which trees to avoid. Their big spines sticking out. Luckily those tires will be fixed in a jiffy for this afternoon's drive. It's nothing like going home and fixing tires afterwards. Used to work in an area where we fixed all of our own tires straight away after drive, and the old ones were the best. The old ones are the easiest to get off the rim with a crowbar. Oh, it's windy. The new ones were slightly more of a struggle and usually involved a mallet. You can hear how the wind is gusting. I don't know what this means. Apart from bits of leaves and dirt in our eyes, I'm not sure what this carries with it. And it's not a cold wind, it's a very, very hot wind. Oh. Just doing a quick loop around Impala Plains. I want to have a look at some of the clearings. See if we can find any animals, but I think that with the wind blowing like it is and my hat barely staying on my head, I think we're going to be peering into the bushes to see the animals hiding away. It's definitely going to make them insecure. A lot on how nice and green it's looking, but really in essence we've only had one proper good rain, and that was almost a month ago now. We're still waiting to see if this wind is going to bring rain across with it, and I've got a funny feeling that it's not going to. And Anna Marie, you were wondering when the rains are going to come. Well, I am hoping that they do. Ultimately, I think there's a chance that we're in for quite a drought. To have rain that early and then nothing, it's going to be very, very dry. Typically, they should only really start in around November, where we get the big thunderstorms and the big rains, and it should continue right through to April. But if this weather pattern follows the same pattern that that happened last year, we had a couple of early drizzles, fairly big rains, and we thought we were in for another flood season like the year before that. And then it just didn't really happen. And bearing in mind that we should get about 500 mils in this area alone, we've had 30. We need a couple of really good, solid, rainy weeks. Some of those days where it just buckets down, or even those cloud bursts where it can rain up to 50 mils in 2 hours. And I really am hoping that that might come through, but I'm not too sure. We'll have to wait and see. I know that there's a lot of predictions being made that it is going to be a very dry season. And you can imagine that if each day is as hot as this day is promising to be, and it's already in the 30s already, I'm sure, apart from a bit of the wind chill, but it must be around 30 degrees at something to 9 o'clock in the morning. You can imagine all the evaporation that's taking place in the dams, and unless we get some rain soon, most of them are going to have disappeared. Of course, I could be wrong. We might get some big rains soon. I don't think so, though. I think we're going to have to wait at least another month before they arrive. And it's one of the reasons that I always find October the hottest time of the year, despite the fact that the temperatures get higher around January and February. It's a bit more humid and there's the storms every night to break the heat. Whereas October is windy, it's dry, and it's quite intense. Sorry guys, I'm just listening to an update on the Game Drive channel. Waiting to hear. They found something there. Sounds like they found a kill. This is quite an interesting conversation. Okay, I think they mistook a sleeping elephant for something else. Okay, no, there's definitely not a kill. It's just a sleeping elephant. Oopsie. Somebody made a bit of a wrong call on the radio there. Whoop, there goes my hat. I think that's the end of that. Just sort of see if I can get some clarification on this. Trying to figure out where they are on the roads, which I can sympathize with. I've done that a couple of times on Arathusa for certain. Our last station just confirmed. Did you say you found it's an involved there? They thought a sleeping elephant was a dead elephant, but we're good to go. They're all fine, they're just sleeping in the shade, just like we've seen the babies do. And I suppose if it's something that you haven't seen before, it might take you a little bit by surprise. I was genuinely concerned there for a moment. I thought that they'd found a dead elephant, but luckily it's now standing up and all is fine. Herd as we saw earlier, and they were quite skittish, and I think it's the wind. It could be something else. Alrighty. back onto Impala Plains and see what we can find here. I don't know how Brent's bird list collecting went. We had so many species to show you at Buffelshoek Dam, but unfortunately it was a bit of a struggle with the signal issues. But there were so many to add to your list. Luckily, as summer comes through, we're going to be seeing more and more of them. Because it is so dry, just going back to that topic of conversation, there's not much in the way of insects out here. There's a couple of chafer beetles, so what I always knew as a kid as Christmas beetles, because they come out during Christmas. There's a couple of dung beetles flying around, maybe the odd flying ant, but nothing too much in the way of insects yet. But Laura from Minnesota, you were wondering how it is that we cope with the insects that we have. And for the most part, yes, absolutely, we ignore them. They're not really too bothersome. You get very used to it very quickly. And I remember watching when I was doing my guides training, a lot of the guides who were with me, or part of the training course, the students, were from international shores. I think most of them were English, but there were a couple of different countries, and they've never really experienced the insects that we have here. Oh, traffic jam. Stop and say hello to Taxon. Morning, morning.
Morning, morning. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? Good morning. Lutu. Lutu.
Lots of trees and stuff.
Lots of trees, yeah. Trees and leaves.
Yes.
It's very green.
Yeah. It's hot.
And it's hot now.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Sharp man. Cheers. Sense of humor there. I'm saying to him, Lutu means nothing. And he says to me, no man, there's lots of trees out here. Lots of trees. Whilst I loop around and try and look for something other than trees, although trees are fascinating in their own right, let's head back across to Brent to see what he has to say, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, I'm just getting my updates. I'm crossing back from Arathusa to Juma. Copy. Thanks, Craig. Update from west is that Salala and Birmingham on Elephant Plains. And other than that, just Lord and Salahesha somewhere. So, okay. So, not much happening. A few more herds of elephants around on Juma. That's about it for the morning. This wind has put a serious dent in our birding, and the birds are few and far between. Just hang on a sec, guys. Sorry, Jamie's just giving me a call on the radio. Standing by. Oh, some wildies. Probably Philemon's dip. Hello, News. So we've got a nice little herd of wildly beasts. And we have, that's the dominant male, and it looks to be he's got some girls. Quite often we see him on his own, but He seems to have won the lottery this week. I'm going to try and move a little bit forward so you can see some of the females. They are in the deep shade already. Here we go. So I'm looking forward to when the lambing season starts for the wildebeest and impala, probably in, what are we now, October. Probably towards the end of November we're going to start seeing lots of baby wildies and impala, and they are incredibly cute. They're all fighting for a little spot in the shade. I would probably guess in terms of temperature, Fahrenheit now at around just after 8 o'clock in the morning, we're sitting at around 90, 92, so already mid-30s in centigrade. And we're going to leave those wildies in the shade and continue on. I think this is actually the clearing, for those of you who've been watching a long time, where we used to see a Bryan's mom quite regularly, and Bryan's mom and Bryan, for the new viewers who don't know, were named after Bryan, the cameraman, who's behind me, who filmed. Did you film it giving birth? So Bryan filmed Bryan's mom, who had a very deformed horn, giving birth to Bryan, so this gets a bit confusing. Unfortunately for Bryan and Bryan's mom, they were both killed and eaten by the Nkahuma pride. Fortunately, it wasn't our Bryan on the back of the vehicle, but just his namesake, the young wildebeest. Thermals are going to be all over the place, and they're going to be able to travel vast distances in search of carrion. So just chatting about vultures and thermals and birds of prey in general, Katie from Ohio says, what's the difference between a buzzard and a vulture, and do we get buzzards in South Africa? Well, Katie, I think if you're from the States, depending on where you are in the States, then you might be thinking of a turkey buzzard. Now, a turkey buzzard is actually more of a vulture than a buzzard in the actual sort of ornithological terms. Let's find a little bit of, and we do get quite a few different buzzards in southern Africa, but they are not like the buzzards that you would be expecting. So our buzzards look more like eagles. They're generally a bit smaller. Oh, there you go. How's that for good luck? I know you guys have seen me when we were trying to find that gecko the other night, flip through the page and look quite silly. But how's that? Open straight onto buzzards. Number 2 is the most common buzzard we get here, and it is called a steppe buzzard or a common buzzard. And strangely enough, they migrate from the steppes of Russia to Africa. So that's where the name the steppe buzzard comes in. And you can see they're not a true eagle. They have bare legs, and they look more like a normal bird of prey. We do get also European honey buzzard here that also migrates, and there they are there. So that's sort of the true buzzards. I think some of the buzzards in the States are actually more related to vultures than actual true buzzards. And there's some other buzzards. That's another one we get here in South Africa, number 4, but generally only on the high veldt. A very pretty buzzard, a jackal buzzard, and we don't get them down here in the low veldt very often. Very occasionally one might get a bit confused and lost, and end up down here. And then if we go look at the vultures, which are a very different kettle of fish. Now I'm going to go page to the book like a silly person again. And I know they should be. There we go. So vultures are specifically designed to eat carrion, even the stranger looking vultures like the Egyptian vulture, which is one of the most rare vultures in the world. Only one seen in southern Africa in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. The common ones we get here, hooded vulture, see bare faces designed for getting inside carcasses. The lappet-faced, which is the beast, the biggest of the vultures. White-headed, also, if we come down a bit here, Bryan. The white-headed, a very rare vulture in this part of the world. More common further north in Africa, but I think there's only 6 breeding pairs in the greater Kruger. And then our most common, the white-backed vulture. And we do occasionally also have Cape vultures as well, or Cape griffins. So here we can see the difference between buzzards and vultures. Okay, let's continue on. We stopped in the shade, otherwise I think Bryan and I might have melted if we had been stationary in this blinding and beating African sunlight. I think we're going to be going through a lot of sun cream this wet season. Beetles made a brief appearance after the rains, but now as we haven't had much more rain and whatnot, I've been watching all the dung piles and we have not been seeing any more yet. I think they're probably the next hatch are waiting for the next rain before they burst from the ground. As we start moving towards the end of this sunrise safari, we're going to send you back to Jamie for a little bit, and she can say her goodbyes and have a last little chat with you, and we'll be with you for the last few moments of the show.
Well, welcome back, and as we continue on our search for everything, I think all the animals of Djuma are trying to disappear as deep into the shade as possible, and very soon I think that we'll be doing the same. Might be a day for standing in the swimming pool in the shade, because it's going to be unbelievably hot today. And as we've discussed for quite a long time, I'm very, very keen for us to get some rain, that we can break some of these high temperatures and hopefully start to see some of the insects we've been talking about, like those dung beetles Brent was discussing, as well as the various reptiles. At the moment, it's too hot even for snakes and tortoises to be out and about. We might even be seeing more of them around camp looking for shelter from the heat. This is just the start of summer. You'll all be happy to know that the supposedly dead elephant was fast asleep and miraculously stood up and continued moving off with the rest of the herd. And there was much embarrassment and laughter on the Game Drive radio. Definitely the entertainment for the morning. On that, it's been very, very quiet. There's still plenty to see and plenty to do out here. But I think it's time for me to go and find some shade on this hot, hot day. And so I'm going to say a big farewell to all of you. It's been wonderful having you on board with us. I don't think you'll see me this afternoon. I think Scott and Brent will be out. So I'm going to be enjoying some time off around the swimming pool. Well, thank you all, and a big thank you to Wium for keeping me entertained as well as helping me change a very, very flat tire. We'll catch up with you for the sunset safari, but have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back. So, like sensible young men, we've decided to stop in the shade again and not brave that harsh African sunlight. Thanks very much for joining us on the sunrise safari. The leopard duck continues, so we're definitely going to have to do something about that. Unfortunately, if we don't have tracks to follow, it's very, very hard to find a leopard. And hopefully those Birminghams decide to come back from visiting the western sections, and hopefully they'll be back soon. Other than that, it's been really, really great having you on the back of the vehicle. Unfortunately, our bird exercise this morning was a little bit of a failure due to this hot wind that picked up just after we decided to start doing some serious birding. But as I said, even if we don't have all the big hairies and scaries out there, there's almost so much fascinating to see out in the African bush. And I hope you guys learnt a bit today. I know I did. I always learn something new every drive. And it was really great to have those Ellies drinking at the Arathusa waterhole towards the end of the safari. And I am definitely looking forward to the sunset safari today. Hopefully, as I said, that we can break that leopard duck and we'll find some tracks around. And we are going to start looking for some more wildflowers. I have been looking today. I haven't seen any new flowers. So unfortunately, there should be a few more coming as the different cycles move through after the rains. And also, for a bit of a change, I think we'll start looking at some butterflies, give the cameraman some work to do, try follow those butterflies through the bush. But for the last little bit of the sunrise safari, we can hear some cicadas, some birds, and the wind, and give you one last look at this beautiful, cloudless, clear African day.